If you're from Tobago, you need to hear this story. But if you're from Speyside, Tobago, I need you to tell me if you've ever heard this story before. Now, this man is Panchoo Campbell. And Panchoo is from Speyside. Or is he? So let's get into his story, right? He died in Speyside in 1938, December 1938, at Batu Bay, where he had been cared for by Miss Edna Whiteley, an American lady who owns Batu Bay. After having seen over 11 decades pass on Earth, so he was like, what, 110? Although he was gone, I cannot leave him out of this book, for his history is too interesting and his name deserves to live on in Tobago. As a boy and young man, he lived in a village in what is now the French Congo. Then came one dreadful day in 1850 when Portuguese slave traders descended on the village. Now, this is 1850, and slavery should have ended in 1838. All right. Now, with many others, Panchoo was driven down to the coast in misery and degradation, a slave to be sold like so much cattle. The unfortunate men were herded on board a slave runner and shipped in despair towards America. The slaver, however, was unlucky. A sail appeared on the horizon and then the hull of a ship. The strange ship altered course and bear down on the slaver. There was no escape, and this strange ship was actually a British frigate of war. So at the time, slavery would have ended, but of course there were people who were still engaged in the slave trade. And what was customary is when a slaver was trapped like that, they usually tied weights to the slaves and threw them overboard so that they would not be caught with slaves on their ships. Luckily for Panchoo, all of the slaves on board were taken off the slaver safely. Once they stepped on board the British ship, they were considered free men. However, the policy at the time was not to return slaves or enslaved people found on these illegal slavers back to their countries of origin. So then basically he was brought. Now, here's the thing. I don't have the rest of the story. I don't know if he was brought to Tobago directly. I don't know where he was taken. But this is the end. This is the last page of the book. His picture is the last page of the book. So if you're from Speyside and maybe your last name is Campbell, or maybe you've heard the story before, interact with this content and let me know. I'd love to hear. Apparently he had this amazing life. I would really love to hear the rest of this story. If you want more Tobago friends, I heard I can find my Campbell family here. Boy, DJ glasses, you know book, but you know no chapter. Listen here, or you would not believe the crazy ride I have been on since I was introduced to this man, Panchoo Campbell, right? So just to recap, Panchoo Campbell was a man who came from Africa and ended up in Speyside, right? Now, he was captured by the Portuguese or sold into slavery, and I'll get into all of that. He was sold into slavery in 1850 and subsequently basically rescued by a British ship that was patrolling the Atlantic Ocean to make sure that people were not being enslaved, because Britain had ended their slave trade, but it seems the Portuguese was like, no, we don't keep this up. We're going to keep this up, right? Rescued from his captors, right, the Portuguese captors. But in those days, they never used to take you back to Africa, eh? They used to carry it to somewhere named St. Helena, because guess what? It wasn't really ended, right? It technically wasn't. Slavery did not end. So, right. So they take him back to this place. But hear this, right? They've taken to St. Helena, and then he comes to Tobago. Now, after the research that I've done, here's what happened. He was brought to Charlotteville and then marched from Charlotteville down to Roxborough. In the time that he was marching, he came across Speyside and he was like, something about Speyside, I just love it. I love this place, Speyside. He gets down to Roxborough, where he basically is adopted by a Scotsman whose last name was Campbell. So that's how he ended up with the Campbell name. Of course, he converts to Christianity, and he then he then takes the name William Campbell, but he's really Panchoo. You know, he came with Panchoo. He came with that name from Africa. Now, I am going about my business. A man calls me and is like, "Hey, I have something that I need to show you. Saw your video about Panchoo Campbell. I have something that I need to show you." So I was like, "Okay, cool, no problem." The man gives me this. It says on it, "So you are a Campbell, right, DJ Glasses? I'm talking to you, right?" So in here, they basically tell the story of Panchoo as it has been in this man. He been in like 2-3 pieces of literature, his story, right? But here's the crazier part. So I had this book for maybe a week, and then I decided I'm gonna open it to see, you know, kind of like, I'm like, oh, okay, let me finally see it. You know, so let's find out who else is a descendant of this man. Alright, so hopefully you all caught up. You know about Panchoo. You know that he was captured by the Portuguese and basically came to Tobago as an indentured worker, right, in 1850. Now, he saw Speyside when he came, and he fell in love with it and was like, I need to get back to Speyside. He married a woman who was from Speyside, and you know, they had children. Now, contrary to popular belief, at least according to this book, which is So You Are a Campbell, right? He didn't have 94 children. He had about 9 children, and probably the grand and great grandchildren probably equated to about 94. He had a favorite granddaughter who was named Frederica, who he called Congo Gal, because where he was taken from was what they called the Belgian Congo, or Zaire, right, present day Zaire. And that's, at least this is according to this book, which is written by one of his descendants. So I have this book for probably about a week, and I was like, you know what, let me open the book, let me see what's happening in here. So I opened the book to about the second to last page, right? Or let me answer the second, like maybe third to last, fourth to last page, right? And in the book is my husband's name. Yes, my husband is a great grandson of Panchoo Campbell, which means that my 2 boys are the great grandchildren of Panchoo Campbell as well. Olio, the internet is an amazing place where connections happen. The world is entirely too small. So, welcome me into the family. Hi, cuz. Ah!